tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Most Venerable Bhikkhu Sangha and friends in Dhamma, I feel so grateful, so happy being given this opportunity to participate in this historical Buddha Dhamma Summit. The world needs Buddha Dhamma today. With all the violence and misery prevailing everywhere, people are so unhappy, so miserable. Buddha Dhamma is the only remedy for the suffering people around the world. And Buddha's Dhamma is such that it is acceptable to one and all. If people are made to understand what is the real teaching of Buddha, and if they are made to practice the teaching of Buddha, I have found nobody who objects the teaching of the Enlightened One. I was fortunate that I was born in Dhamma land, Myanmar. I was brought up in this Dhamma land, Myanmar. But I was born in a very staunch, conservative Hindu family, brought up in the atmosphere around me where people had great misunderstanding and misgivings about the Buddha and his teaching. I was brought up in that environment. But fortunately, a blessing in disguise, I started suffering from a very severe type of migraine for which there was no treatment in my motherland. The best doctors here, my family doctor Om Prakash, and the famous doctor here, Colonel Min Singh, they tried their best. Whenever the attack of migraine comes, they tried to give me different kinds of painkillers. Nothing worked. They started giving me morphia injection. After a few years, the doctors were worried that I may soon become addicted to morphia. Somehow I must come out of it, but there was no solution. Then my doctor said, you keep going around the world for your business, forget business, and go once round the world to come out of the morphia. We know that migraine and the special type of migraine from which you are suffering, there is no remedy. But you can come out of morphia. There must be some other painkiller which will help you. With their advice, I went out, spent a lot of time and money with the best doctors in Switzerland, in Germany, in England, in America and Japan came back worse. None could help me to come out of morphia, migraine far away. It was a blessing in disguise. A friend of mine, who was then the Attorney General of the government of Myanmar, and who was also Secretary General of the first Sangaina, he advised me that yours is a psychosomatic case. There was a lot of ego, lot of anger, lot of aversion. All those impurities were there. If you take a course of Vipassana, you will be out of these impurities. Your problem will get solved. Vipassana. From the very childhood, I was taught Buddha is great because he is incarnation of God Almighty Vishnu, but his teaching, never go to his teaching. That is dangerous, not for us. And now I am asked to go for Vipassana. That is the teaching of Buddha. Oh no, no. I was taught Swadharame Nidhanam Shreya Paradharamo Bhayavaha. Better die in your own religion, but never go to another religion. This was the training given to me. Buddha's teaching is another religion. I better die in migraine, but I won't go. Then my good friend told me, why not meet the teacher and understand what the teaching is? I went to meet my coming teacher, Sayadaw U Ba Khin, a householder, first Accountant General of independent Myanmar. When I went to meet him in his house, the whole atmosphere was so peaceful. Such a saintly person. And when I told him that I have come to him for my problem of migraine, very compassionately he said, Goenka, don't come to me. You are devaluing such a high spiritual path which will liberate you from all the miseries of birth and death, and you want to use it for this disease? Don't come. If you want to come to purify your mind, to develop love, compassion, goodwill for everyone, then come, you are welcome. Very frankly, I told him, sir, I am born in very staunch Hindu conservative family, and we have lot of misgivings about Buddha's teaching. How can I come to your course, sir? He smiled and said, Goenka, you are leader of the Hindu community in this country. Tell me, in your religion, any objection for morality, Sila? Morality? How can there be any objection for morality? No religion of the world has any objection for morality. No, sir. No objection. In these 10 days I will teach you morality, Sila. But how can you practice morality if you don't have control over your mind? I will teach you how to control your mind, how to become the master of your mind. You are a slave of your mind. I will teach you samadhi. Any objection? In my Hindu literature, I had read so much about samadhi. This rishi has gone in the forest and practiced samadhi. That muni has gone in the forest and practiced samadhi. I am a householder. If somebody teaches me samadhi, If somebody teaches me how to control the mind, wonderful. No, sir. In our religion, no objection for samadhi. Again he smiled and said, Goenka, samadhi is good, no doubt. But it won't take you to the final goal of full liberation from all the miseries. It will calm down your mind. It will purify your mind to a certain extent. But at the depth of the mind, your great store of impurities, we call it anusaya kilesha, unless that is eradicated, you are not liberated from your misery. To eradicate the deep-rooted impurities of the mind, to change the behavior pattern of your life, we teach another technique, and that we call panya. Any objection? Oh, in my Gita, I had been reading and I have been giving lectures on panya. We call it pragya. Pragya? Just giving lectures. I never practiced what pragya is, what panya is. And this saintly person says that by practicing panya, I can come out of all the impurities of the mind. And I knew I am suffering from these impurities. The ego was so strong. There was so much anger, passion, lust, so much impurity. If I can get rid of that, no, nothing wrong. And he said, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, that's all. I am going to teach you only these three, nothing else. And Buddha taught only these three, nothing else. So many things in your country, in India, so much blame was given to Buddha and his teaching. But really, the actual teaching, if people understand, all the misgivings will go away, all the misunderstandings will go away. I am going to teach you the pure teaching of Buddha, nothing else. I thought, let me give a trial, let me see. And had a strong determination. I will not become a Buddhist. I will take a 10-day course, but I will not become a Buddhist. All right, let me give a trial. And I went to his center. He gave me a small pamphlet, a small booklet, the first page. As I was reading it, I was wonderstruck. Buddha's words. And he says, don't believe, don't believe, don't believe, don't believe. Don't believe even if your teacher says something. You experience the truth. And with your personal experience, if you find that it is good for you and good for everyone else, then only accept it. And not only accept it, then live that life. Wonderful. I had come from a tradition where I am told that if you don't believe, you will go to hell. If you believe, you will go to heaven. And here is somebody saying, don't believe, don't believe. Oh, there is no blind faith in this teaching. No blind belief. You must experience yourself, and if you find it good for you and good for others, then only accept it. Those words attracted me, and I took my course. 3 days, Anapana, then Vipassana was given. Day by day, as I practiced, I found all these things are there in the religion from which I am coming. But they are only sermons, no practice. And here I am asked to practice. Control of the mind, purification of the mind, to live a moral life, real moral life. Within 10 days, morphia was gone forever. Migraine was gone forever. And they looked so unimportant to me, my behavior pattern started changing. Not that within 10 days, all my impurities went away, but they started getting diminished. My entire behavior pattern started changing. Then for the first time I started reading the words of Buddha. For the first time at the age of 31, living in a country where most of the people are followers of Buddha Dhamma, I had never read Buddha's teaching. I had never heard any sermon from a monk. Now, after Vipassana, I started reading the first book, Dhamma Pada. Every pada that I read, every gatha, like ambrosia, was nectar, so good, so pure. Why this great misunderstanding about Buddha's teaching? Perhaps there is something wrong in other sermons of Buddha. Then with the advice of my teacher, I started reading other scriptures, the words of Buddha. I was so fascinated. A magnetic pull I got by Vipassana, and then a magnetic pull by the words of Buddha. Wonderful teacher. In my previous tradition, Sila is given importance. And then later on, when I started teaching, as per the instructions of my teacher, and went round the world, met people of different religions, I found morality is acceptable to every religion. Every religion worth its name teaches morality, but teaches morality. How to practice it? Here Buddha is interested in the practice. He is not interested in merely giving sermons. He teaches. And his enlightenment. With the enlightenment, he discovered the real root of misery. This was known to many traditions in the neighboring country, India, that you become miserable because you generate craving, aversion, tanha. That was acceptable. But Buddha went much deeper. The depth of the problem. I was told that Shila is important because if you take any action, physical or vocal, which is harmful, which harms and hurts other people, which disturb the peace and harmony of the atmosphere around you, it is not good. So abstain from that. Don't harm others. That was known to me. But now I understand. I understood with the words of Buddha. I understood with my personal practice that by breaking Shila, I am not just harming others, I am harming myself. The words of Buddha started ringing in my ears. Pubbe hanati attanang pacha hanati sopare. First you harm yourself. First you kill your own peace and harmony. Then only you kill others. Then only you harm others. And it became so clear. I can't break any Shila. I can't kill anybody. I can't steal. I can't have any sexual misconduct. I can't speak lies and deceive others without generating some impurity or the other in my mind. First I have to generate an impurity in the mind, and then only I take physical or vocal action to harm others. And with the practice that was given to me, And the practice now tried by people around the world. Hundreds and thousands of people are practicing Vipassana, and they agree. As soon as one generates an impurity in the mind, one becomes miserable. Anger, hatred, ill will, animosity, passion, fear, ego, any impurity, you are the first victim of your negativity. Pubbye hanatyattahanam. That was something new to the mankind, a great discovery by the super scientists of the spiritual world. Pubbye hanatyattahanam. You first harm yourself, then only harm others. Yes, quite true. When I generate an impurity, I become so miserable, because people do not know to observe the reality within themselves. When you generate anger, when you take some action, unwholesome action towards anybody, your conscious mind keeps on thinking, so and so harmed me, so and so insulted me, that is why I have to take action, I have to take revenge. These are the thoughts coming in your mind, but you do not know what happens deep inside. The whole body starts burning, tension increases, palpitation increases. Oh, what a great misery Vipassana taught me. And Vipassana taught hundreds and thousands of people who are practicing now. Observe yourself. Observe the truth within yourself. Then only you will realize what is happening within you. If I touch burning fire, I get hurt, I get burned. I get that lesson. And then I never touch the burning fire because I have experienced it. Similarly, if you keep on experiencing that every time you generate any impurity in the mind, you are the first victim of that impurity. You become miserable. Having that experience once, twice, 10 times, 100 times, the behavior pattern starts changing. Oh, the Shila taught by Buddha is far deeper than the Shila taught by different religions. I am not against different religions, but understand, the technique of Buddha brought us to that depth, and you realize the truth about yourself, truth about the entire universe. Samadhi. To concentrate the mind is acceptable by every religion of the world. To discipline the mind is acceptable by every religion of the world. Buddha also taught it. But then the Samadhi taught by Buddha is for the purpose to go to the next step, Panya. If the Samadhi does not take us to Panya, however good it may be, it will not take us to the final goal. What Samadhi he gave. Of course, there are many objects with the help of which one can train the mind, one can concentrate the mind, one can discipline the mind. Even Buddha gave about 40 objects, but the most important object that he gave, which he keep on explaining again and again, is Anapana. Observe your own breath, natural breath, as it is. Satova assasati, satova passasati. Aware of the breath, nothing but breath, bare breath, mere breath, natural breath. As it comes in, as it goes out, naturally. If it is deep, it is deep. If it is shallow, it is shallow. Don't interfere with the natural flow of the breath. You are here to observe the truth as it is, yatha bhuta, as it is, not as you would like it to be, as it is. And then, as Buddha explained, my teacher explained me, keep your attention at the entrance of the nostrils, the area below the nostrils, above the upper lip. And when I went through the words of the Buddha, it became so clear. Nasikagde, after the nostrils. then below the nostrils, above the upper lip. Uttarothasya Vimajjapadesi. The upper lip, the middle part of the upper lip. This is what Buddha wanted us to keep the attention here, so that you can feel every breath coming in, every breath going out. Experience is necessary. Not merely intellectually understanding, yes, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. You are experiencing breathing in, breathing out. Why? Why this was given? Not merely for the concentration of the mind, but within 2 or 3 days, I started feeling, and these hundreds and thousands of people who started practicing, they start feeling. On the 3rd day, they start feeling sensation on this area. And this was again a great discovery of this enlightened person. I call him the super scientist of the spiritual world. Vedana, sensation. Throughout the tradition of spirituality, it was taught that don't react to the sensual objects. When a shape or form or color or light comes in contact with your eye sense door, a sound comes in contact with your ear sense door, a smell comes in contact with your nose sense door, a taste comes in contact with your tongue sense door, something tangible comes in contact with your body sense door, or a thought or an emotion comes in contact with the mind sense door, don't react. Don't react with craving or with aversion. Don't react with lobha or dosha. That was not new, given by Buddha. It was there already. What was new? Buddha said, no. You are not reacting to the outside object. This is only apparent truth. It appears to be so. It seems to be so. Actually, when the object, the sense object, comes in contact with the sense door, phassa, contact, phassa pachaya vedana, there is a sensation. And then only you react. Vedana pachaya tanha, not salayatan pachaya tanha. Vedana pachaya, a great discovery of this enlightened person. He was the first person to give importance to the body sensation. If you can't feel sensation, how can you come to the root of tanha? How will you know that you are generating tanha? How will you know that you are generating lobha or moha? The base, at the root level, the sensation. Within 3 days, the technique takes everyone to the stage where they start feeling sensation. And then from the 4th day onwards, from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, sabbakaya pati samvedi, assasi samiti sekkati, passasi samiti sekkati. The entire body, sensation in the entire body, one understands, one feels, from the top of the head to the tips of the toes. Everywhere some sensation or the other. And the old habit pattern was to react to these sensations. If the sensation is pleasant, then you start reacting with lobha. If it is unpleasant, then you start reacting with dosa. This is the habit pattern of everyone, every human being. And Buddha helps us to come out of this habit pattern. Whatever sensation you experience, pleasant or unpleasant, gross or subtle, every sensation has the same characteristic, and the characteristic is arising, passing away, arising, passing away, anicca, 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 anicca. This is the characteristic of every sensation. Not to understand merely at the intellectual level, not to accept merely at the emotional or devotional level because Buddha said so. At the actual level, at the experiential level, you find every sensation that arises. Every sensation that arises, it arises to pass away. Sooner or later it passes away. Initially, the solidity of the body is there. So one feels gross, unpleasant, solidified, intensified sensations. But as one keeps on practicing as taught by the enlightened one, all the solidity starts getting dissolved. the entire body, there is no solidity left. From Uday, Vay, one reaches the stage of Bhanga, total dissolution of the solidity. Mere vibrations, arising, passing with great rapidity. This has to be experienced. Then you are going to the root of your mind. You can't change the root of your mind unless you reach the stage where you can feel sensations throughout the body, different kinds of sensations, and you train the mind not to react. A wonderful technique. It was acceptable to me, and many of my Indian friends who were here, whoever went to Sayadaji U Ba Khen, found the same result. 14 years I was fortunate to work under his guidance, and after 14 years, he had a great Dhamma abolition, that this invaluable jewel has come from India, and India has lost it. Today, India is bankrupt so far as this wonderful Dhamma is concerned. And my Sayadaji used to say, it is my duty, it's the duty of all the Buddha's followers in the world to pay back the debt of gratitude to India. It came from India. It must go back to India. He very much wanted to go himself and pay back this debt of gratitude, but due to some reason or the other, he could not go. And when the government here, I am so grateful to the government here. I am grateful for two reasons. Then when all my trade and industry were nationalized, I felt so happy. I am now relieved. I can spend all my time now for Dhamma, and really I spend most of my time for Dhamma. Those 14 years of my life are golden years. And another fortunate that this government gave me a passport. I was a Burmese citizen. Passports were given only to such people who go out from Burma for all the life, or those who get some appointment outside. I applied that my mother is sick. If she gets Vipassana, she will come out of misery. Very compassionately I was given a Myanmar passport. I am grateful to the India government. They gave me visa. I went there, and as per the desire of my teacher, I started teaching Vipassana there. Teaching of Vipassana is not easy. We have to give residential courses. There must be arrangement for people to come and stay with me for 10 days, day and night. Who will arrange? I have no money. I have nobody to help me. How these courses will be arranged? And my Sayadaji says, Dhamma is great, you don't worry. Now time has ripened, 2,500 years after Buddha. The Dhamma will go from this land to Anna Bhumi, to the country of origin. Time has ripened. There are many people with good paramis who will accept you, accept Dhamma. And it so happened, surprisingly, within a few days the first course was arranged. And then courses after courses, courses after courses. People from different religions, from different communities, people from such tradition who had not only misgivings, who have got great aversion towards Buddha's teaching, when they come to the course, oh, so wonderful, so wonderful. It is so rational, so pragmatic, and so scientific. Interaction of mind and matter. Because we remain ignorant of this interaction of mind and matter within ourselves, we do not know that we are generating impurity and we are becoming miserable. And the technique takes you to the stage where you go to the depth of the mind, the root of the mind, where impurity starts, where impurity gets multiplied, and where the impurity gets stored, and your behavior pattern becomes so unwholesome. You make yourself miserable, you make others miserable. Everybody accepts it. It's a scientific, pragmatic, logical way of practice. And then result-oriented. It gives result here and now, akaliko. You won't have to wait till after death. Of course, till after death also you get good result, but now, what you get now? Here and now, here and now. you get so much of peace. People come in the courses with so much of melancholy on their face, so much sadness. Everybody is miserable due to this or that, this or that. Practicing for 10 days, it is something worth seeing. This glow on the face of everyone, this smile on the face of everyone. Akaliko, akaliko. It gives result here and now, here and now. So people start accepting it from all these sections of the society, rich or poor, educated or uneducated. Makes no difference. Human being is human being. Human mind is human mind. Black or white or yellow or brown, human being is human being. A Myanmar or Indian or an Englishman or an American or a Japanese or a Chinese makes no difference. Human being is human being. A Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddha Dhamma follower or a Christian or a Jewish makes no difference. Human being is human being. Same cause of misery with everyone and the same way of coming out of misery for everyone. That is why round the world people have accepted it. There is no major religion in the world, whose followers are not attending Vipassana courses. Not only followers, their teachers are attending Vipassana courses. Till now, more than 3,000 Christian priests and nuns, have participated, and every year hundreds of them are coming. Why? The first missionary who came to the course, at the end of the course, a mother superior, elder lady, she says, Goenka, you are teaching Christianity in the name of Buddha. I am teaching Dhamma, and Dhamma is of everyone. Dhamma is for everyone. One may be a Christian or a Jewish or a Hindu, makes no difference. A Muslim, no difference. Courses were given in Muslim mosques, courses were given in Christian cathedrals, in Hindu temples, in Jain temples. Everyone accepts, no problem, because it is result oriented. It gives result here and now, here and now. Time has ripened now. I am so grateful to this country. I am so grateful to the Sangha of this country, who maintained the purity of not only Pariyatti, but also Patipatti. Pure Patipatti. And that is why I got this pure Patipatti, because it was preserved in its pristine purity. And I got it. And I got the wonderful result. And people around the world are getting it now. There are about 130 centers around the world where residential courses are given. More than 800 people are trained to give Vipassana. They are teachers. And every year, 50 or 100 teachers are now being trained. The demand is so much. Misery is everywhere. I am glad that this summit will become a historical summit. And from here, Dhamma will spread. Dhamma will spread around the world. All the miserable people of the world, and everyone is miserable, rich or poor, makes no difference. Everyone is miserable. They will get Dhamma. And they will come out of misery. I am thankful to the Sangha. I am thankful to the people of this country who preserved Dhamma in its pristine purity. May Dhamma spread around the world. May Dhamma help the miserable people around the world. May there be peace, real harmony, real happiness in the world. Bhavatu Sarvamangalam. Bhavatu Sarvamangalam. Bhavatu Sarvamangalam.